You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to the line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show. Welcome, everybody, and welcome, fellow patriots. Welcome once again to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader, coming to you live from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network at WNGC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM, 24/7. Indeed, we are everywhere. We're everywhere. And joining me today as my co-host is the President and CEO of Frontiers of Freedom, and that's George Landreth. George, welcome to Conservative Commandos Radio Show.
It's good to be with you.
Great to have you with me, George. George,
Absolutely.
There's so much in the news today, but I would like to know, have you been on a jetliner lately? In particular, have you been on United Airlines lately?
I haven't, but I know that the news there is kind of upsetting, but I think, I did hear some good news come out of this. We finally figured out how to get rid of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. I'm told, at least, that the Department of Defense has subcontracted out to United to remove him. My understanding is they're supposed to ask him several times to leave politely. If he refuses, then United workers will bloody his nose a bit and remove him from his seat inside his presidential palace.
Well, George, I do know that you are a licensed attorney, and I have a clue for you to make a lot of money, and that's get that doctor as a client. I think
somebody's already got him.
I think he's got a slam dunk case.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I don't think that's not a case that's going to go to trial. It'll be settled, and he'll have enough money for him and his family to live handsomely for a few generations, is my assumption.
I mean, when you've got the CEO of United Airlines coming on and in essence saying what a disgrace it was for the airlines, this guy's got a great case, George Landreth. This guy's got a great case.
Yeah, no, he does. It's interesting. I did hear the airline president say that the guy did, quote, nothing wrong, which isn't entirely true. You actually, if you're asked to leave, you're supposed to cooperate. You have it's like on a ship. The captain of the ship is in charge, and you have to do what you're asked to do, even if it's seems ridiculous to you, because and then afterwards you can go to a court and litigate it. But the idea is, so it's interesting. I mean, I still, obviously, you don't deserve to get roughed up and beat up just because of that, but it was kind of interesting to see these things collide, basically, because technically he's supposed to comply. He didn't, but I just don't think in a civil society you can kind of have that happen, particularly since there was no risk to anybody. I mean, it's different if somebody's not complying, like, say, on 9/11, and they're rushing towards the front of the plane with box cutters.
Right.
If you want to bloody his nose, go for it. I hope you do worse than that. But this is not that case, obviously. So I think it's big problems for United. I think in general, generally when I'm on an airplane, I think the support personnel are always nice and so forth, but you never really get the impression that you're being catered to. We have kind of at least in America, our travel is designed to be as cheap as possible, and I sometimes think that service suffers from that. But that's just the way it works, though. We like to travel cheap. I understand that. I don't have a lot of money, so I don't want to waste it. I have to be honest. If all they're going to give me is some pretzels and a soda on the way, if I can save a couple $100, that's worth it to me. Yeah. But I wouldn't take kindly to getting my nose bloodied.
George, have you ever been bumped?
That's where I draw the line.
Have you ever been bumped by an airline? George, have you ever been bumped by an airline?
I have not been.
Yeah, well, I've
seen it happen where they have to, they start asking people and they start,
Yeah.
Sweetening the deal. But I've never actually had that happen. I've been on planes where they've tried to do that, and they've always gotten somebody based on sweetening the deal to say yes.
Well, I have. One time I was on a flight from Philadelphia to Los Angeles, picking up a connecting flight from Los Angeles to Honolulu. And the flight left Philadelphia an hour late because the crew didn't get there on time. So we figured, well, no sweat. We're on a United Airlines, and we're catching another United Airlines plane. They know we're there. They know we're on our way to Los Angeles. No problem. So when we got to Los Angeles, we get to the gate, and it was mobbed. It was packed. The plane was a 747, so you can just imagine. So we walk up to the gate.
We walk up. A lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people. So we walk up to the gate, and they says, well, you're late. You're going to have to stand right here. I says, well, we're late because you guys got us here late, all right? And so they says, well, you're going to have to stand right here. And lo and behold, I see the doors closing. You know, the gate doors closing to the runway, to the jet, and we're not on it. It says, whoa, wait a minute. We got seats on that plane. They said, no, because you were late, we gave your seats away.
Nice.
Which made me extremely angry, because I said, wait a minute, we're here late because you guys got us here late, because your crew was late getting to the airport in Philadelphia. I says, I went on that plane. I says, and they says, well, we can't do that. The plane's already been seated. We're about to taxi away. I says, well, what are you going to do? They says, well, we'll put you up in a hotel tonight, the airport hotel, and we'll fly you out tomorrow. I said, wait a minute. I have a hotel room in Honolulu for myself tonight. I want to be in that hotel room. And the gate personnel responded this way, George. Well, I want a Cadillac, but I am not going to get that either. And at that point, I hit the ceiling, and I start making phone calls.
Good service. It's kind of interesting how we are sometimes treated, and I'm a big believer that's why free markets work best. I will tell you, along that line, I have a friend who, and I do not know the facts here, but he reported to me that a lot of this is actually government, and meaning a lot of what happened. For example, he said, everyone keeps saying, why didn't they just put those guys on a bus or some other thing to get them, or an Uber to get the staff that they had to get from one airport to another?
And to let our audience know, United Airlines wanted to bump this guy because they wanted to put their airline personnel on this plane.
Right, to get them to the next location.
To get them to the next location.
That's probably the product of a collective bargaining agreement, and the government has come down the side of labor and forces management on some level, kind of ties their hands a bit. I mean, the negotiations that take place between labor and management aren't actually even. The scales of justice are being tipped by government towards labor. But and then he also pointed out, he said, and he wasn't trying to defend United at all. He's just pointing out this is how government screws things up for you. He says under law, they probably can't keep. Some people said, well, they should offer people like $5,000 in cash. And he said that the regulations are such they can't. They can
I think that's a bunch of bull, George.
Again, why is government doing that? It's not a smart move.
No, George, it wouldn't take $5,000 for somebody to give up their seat. There have been times when I've been, especially in the way home from somewhere, where I volunteered to get bumped because you get another flight, you get also compensation, you get a free flight, and I like that. And there are times that I've volunteered to be bumped. I've never been bumped. Right. When I volunteered, that time I was bumped in Los Angeles. By the way, I did sleep in that hotel in Honolulu that night. I did get there late, and I did get what I felt was fair compensation from United Airlines for that. After I made a bunch of calls, and my travel agent made a bunch of calls, I even got to speak with the vice president at United over that situation.
Awesome.
But
my point in telling you that what I just said isn't to in any way exonerate United. It's just to point out, though, that there are some times where we always think, why weren't things done better? And the answer might be because the government messes things up and does a poor job.
Yeah. George, we're going to take a break, and you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with George Landreth, President and CEO of Frontiers of Freedom, and yours truly, Rick Trader. And we're coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network at WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7. Today's show is being brought to you by the First Amendment, not United Airlines, and protected by the second. Maybe they should protect us against the United Airlines. Be right back.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos radio network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wade. Conservative Commandos is happy to welcome Liberty HealthShare as a sponsor. Liberty HealthShare is a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. Liberty HealthShare exists for everyone who purchases health care for themselves or their family, or who wants to control their own health care. I run a small business, and we were caught in the confusion of Washington's ever-changing health insurance requirements. We found a common-sense solution in Liberty HealthShare. Liberty HealthShare is not insurance. It simply unites like-minded Americans to share medical costs together. Join a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. That's Liberty HealthShare. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty HealthShare today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237, or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org.
This is Pastor Christina Lamanier, chaplain for the Indiana Republican Assembly.
And I'm her husband, J.D. Manier. We won the election, but we must now install President Trump's nominees. We urge you to call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-225-3121 and ask your senators to do their job. They need to confirm Judge Neil Gorsuch and remaining cabinet members.
We the people never want to see another Berkeley. The First Amendment doesn't give you the right to commit acts of violence. It pains us to watch anarchy unfold on college campuses, bus stops, and coffee shops. Thomas Jefferson said, all tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. Let us join in unity to pray for America. Once again, the number to call is 202-225-3121.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show with George Landreth and Rick Trader. And we're coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network at WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia. Also simulcasting on radio stations in Tampa, Florida, Las Vegas, Nevada, Macomb, Georgia, Lancaster, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Boulder, Colorado, Milwaukee, Long Beach, California, Reno, Nevada. We are everywhere. We are everywhere. Well, George, one of the fun things that I look forward to on Thursday is kind of like wrapping up the week in review. And how can we talk about what happened this week without talking about Donald Trump taking action in Syria?
Absolutely. It's kind of interesting. I know that there are people out there who are upset saying he said he wasn't going to get us involved in wars and things like that, but I don't think he's done that. I think sending cruise missiles is a radically different thing than sending ground troops, and I think that's what he made it clear. He wasn't going to be sending ground troops all over the world. and I think we shouldn't. I think we should only when it, when our national interest says we should do that. But his point was there are times where it is useful for us to take action, to be, and this is a point that I think, there's almost no risk whatsoever to Americans by doing this, but tremendous risk to our adversaries. And so that's a pretty good analysis or pretty good balance of why I thought it was a good move. I think that I'll give you an example of where it made a benefit. This is all going on while he's having dinner at Mar-a-Lago with the president of China. Interestingly, the president of China apparently tells their UN representative to abstain rather than to vote against the American proposal. That's the first time they've done that on something like this. They always sided with the other communists in the world, for example, Russia, when it came to things that the U.S. wanted. All of a sudden, though, they decide, you know what, we're not going to stand in your way, we're going to let that go. That's an example of where exercising some proactive leadership rather than leading from behind helps America's interests. And so to me, it was a good thing. And I know that I'm not someone who says we should be sending troops into Syria either. I think there's very few people who support that. But he didn't do that. So I don't know why there's this group of people that kind of act like, wringing their hands about it. But to me, it struck me as a smart move. I don't know. How did you see it?
Well, I see it as a smart move, too. And 2 points, George. I think it sends a message to Russia, North Korea, and Iran, as well as China, that this is a president that's not going to draw lines in the sand and then back away from them. Point number 2, George, it reminded me very much of what Ronald Reagan did in 1986 when he sent 100 cruise missiles, it was jets. He sent jets into Libya and bombed the hell out of Libya. And after that, Omar Gaddafi really changed his tone. Remember that, George?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He really changed his tone.
And he stopped being a problem for us after that. And it didn't take much more before he decided he wanted to be our ally. Once Bush was in power, and we, he decided, you know what, I don't need any trouble here. So he began being helpful in the war on terror.
Indeed. So I think that, and what's the downside of this, George? People are talking, those I see as the upsides, and I'm looking for a downside, George, and if you were playing devil's advocate, where is the downside? This Bashar al-Assad poisoned innocent women and children with gases. And by the way, remember all those gases, those poisonous gases that Syria gave up? Well, I guess they didn't give them all up, did they, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton? Or maybe a lot of those
Susan
gases were the gases that never existed that came out of Iraq. But anyway, that's beyond the point. George, playing devil's advocate, do you see a downside?
Well, everything has its costs and benefits. The cost is, I guess, we're down 59 cruise missiles, right?
Yeah, I think they can be
Tomahawk
replaced.
Missiles. I'm being facetious. That's the downside I see is that we spent 59 cruise missiles. Tomahawks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's it. I think the rest of the world's paying attention. I think that today the Moab bomb that was dropped in Afghanistan sends the same message. It reinforces this idea, which is because it's fine to say we're not going to commit ground troops everywhere in the world. I think that's a good point. I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. But I don't want the message to be, which it was for the last 8 years, is we simply don't care. You can do whatever you want. You can kill our servicemen and our warfighters. Mm-hmm. You can damage our interest around the globe, and we will simply release angrily termed press releases from the State Department about how you are, irresponsible. And that was bad policy. It increased the likelihood of those things happening. There is something between. There's a very, very large, vast chasm between doing nothing except for angry press releases and a full-out, all-on ground war for 10 years. Between those two things, there's a lot of room. And I feel like Donald Trump found some pretty good space. And it's the sort of space that promotes our interests at a phenomenally small risk. phenomenally small.
Well, George, as I said, in 1986, Ronald Reagan bombed Gaddafi. He was brought under control. I think the same thing could have been done, could have been said, as far as help me out, Iraq, the Iraq bad guy.
You think the Iraq leader?
Yeah.
Saddam
Hussein, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, the problem, as I see, that we're having in Iraq today is Saddam Hussein was this bad guy. He was a tyrannical dictator. Tyrannical dictators have a habit of anybody who has any leadership ability, that they will be seen as a threat, and the tyrannical leader will get rid of them. I think the same thing that has happened in Syria. Bashar al-Assad is a bad guy. He's a tyrannical dictator. Anybody with any leadership ability, he's gotten rid of. So if you get rid of him, who fills the vacuum there, George? Like, we've had a hard time filling the vacuum of leadership in Iraq. We've had some really, really poor people in charge of that country since Saddam Hussein. And I'm not saying that Saddam Hussein was a good guy in any sense of the imagination. He was a bad guy. But could we have controlled that bad guy the way we controlled Gaddafi? Can we control this bad guy in Syria without getting rid of him, without creating a vacuum there for, say, the Muslim Brotherhood or ISIS or even the Soviet Union to fill?
No, I think that's the key, and that's this is well, first of all, conducting foreign policy is about taking measured risks and sending the right messages. And I think he sent messages that exude strength and advance our cause, but quite frankly have not put us at risk. And so when people get all upset about this, I mean, I think the sole risk is that we actually have 59 fewer Tomahawk missiles today. That's it.
Yep.
There's no downside. I mean, let's be honest. And yet there are people out there who are acting. And what's very funny is there are people who I've heard people talk about how important it is that we use diplomacy more. And I'm like, we tried that for 8 years. Diplomacy works better when there's an implied
Where has
diplomacy,
where has drawn lines in the sand got us? George, we need to take a break, and you are listening to Conservative Commandos Radio Show with George Landreth and Rick Trader, coming to you from WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia and around the world on the internet, and simulcasting on stations in Tampa, Florida, Las Vegas, Nevada, Reno, Nevada, Macon, Georgia, Lancaster and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Boulder, Colorado, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Long Beach, California. Don't go away. George and I will be right back with more news and commentary.
I'm crazy. I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos Radio Show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos Radio Show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos Radio Show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today. to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
If your health care has become a burden and you're worried about being stuck for another year, you have options. Liberty Health Share could be the solution to your problem. Open enrollment is here and could be your chance to free yourself from insurance. Take this opportunity and join Liberty Health Share. You can finally be in control and have freedom when it comes to your health care. Liberty Health Share offers an entirely open network, which means you choose your doctors and you choose your hospitals. Liberty Health Share offers freedom from insurance, meaning no tax-related penalties. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty Health Share today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237. Or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org. That's libertyhealthshare.org.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos Radio Show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos Radio Show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with George Landreth and yours truly, Rick Trader. And if you'd like to hear rebroadcasts of our shows, check out our websites, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com, or at 11 a.m., log on to Red Nation Rising Radio, or at midnight, log on to redstatetalkradio.com, or you can hear our show any time of the day from your phone by calling 832-999-1199. George, we have a couple of great guests joining us today.
Absolutely, we do. And it'll be a fun conversation with them all. We have at, 4 o'clock, top of the hour, we've got Betsy, is it McCoy? McCoy, okay.
Yes.
Fair enough. Betsy McCoy. And she is the former lieutenant governor of the state of New York. She's also a constitutional scholar. She's got a PhD from Columbia University. She'll be very interesting to talk with. And she is going to talk to us about robots and the impact that they will have on the economy. Some people say they'll make us all unemployed. And I think she's going to bring some interesting points to discuss this issue with us. So that'll be at 4, and then at 4:30 we've got James Carafano, and he's a national security and foreign policy expert with the Heritage Foundation. He's also their vice president of foreign and defense policy strategies. So he'll join us, and we're going to talk a bit about North Korea and what's going on there. And I won't be a bit surprised if some of the things that we were just talking about in Syria and perhaps even Afghanistan won't play into that conversation, even though Korea is a long ways from both of those. My guess is some of what Mr. Trump is doing is he's negotiating. Mm-hmm. And he's negotiating with Mr. Kim Jong-un. And I think he's setting some terms on the negotiation that might help America's cause a bit.
Yeah, and I do have some questions for James Carafano about North Korea and also that China. I understand that China has put 150,000 troops along the North Korean border, and also Japan is sending one of their naval ships to join the armada that's on the way to the area by Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. So, couple of great guests.
Absolutely.
So, George, what else is on your radar screen?
Well, as I look around and see what's going on in the world, I think there's plenty of interesting stuff. One of the ones that I think is kind of interesting is the fact that over time, you remember when Donald Trump first tweeted that folks were listening in on him? I think he put the word wiretap in quotes. Mm-hmm. He referred to that. And, of course, immediately everyone, said, oh, that's, ridiculous. Not true at all. Nobody. That's just absurd. And now we're to the point where enough is developed that what we're really now arguing about is whether those are technically wiretaps or something else, because wiretap's actually kind of an old. And we're to the point now, unless someone has actual video footage of Barack Obama wearing like an orange jumpsuit or some sort of thing, going in with alligator clip pins and sneaking into Trump Tower and finding their main phone board, and then he's not, him actually hooking up these old, alligator clip wired pins into Mr. Trump's personal phone. Short of that, they'll just say it's not true now. But that's kind of where we've gone on this. And what's interesting is it is demonstrated that, I used to think of Susan Rice as somebody who lied about Benghazi and so forth. But now we kind of look back on her career, and what we realize is that she's basically just a liar. Mm-hmm. It's not just Benghazi, it's everything. This is a woman who simply can't tell the truth or won't. You can run through the different things, but just, if you go back in history, you have, of course, the Benghazi thing on Face the Nation, and she went on every other Sunday morning TV show and said, we do not have information at present that leads us to conclude that this was a premeditated or pre-planned. And she went on to say that it was the faults of a filmmaker. And we now know that even Hillary, the day of the attack, knew that wasn't true. And the entire U.S. government knew that wasn't true, and presumably she did too, because she would have attended those same briefings. But this is the lie they told, and it was a political lie that was needed to be told, because it was not going to be helpful in the weeks leading up to an election for their line, which is, we saved, Osama bin Laden's dead, GM's alive. So Osama bin Laden's dead, GM's alive. That was their chant. Remember, right. That's the silly kind of. Oh yeah. So it was not going to be helpful to have terrorism and Al Qaeda killing an American ambassador in the weeks leading up to the election, when their mantra was, we're defeating ISIS and Al-Qaeda. They're on the run and all this. And so the lie was a political necessity, and she was all too happy to tell it. But then you go on, and then you have Bo Bergdahl. The president gives this stupid deal where he trades and gives away 5, essentially the equivalent of field generals for Al-Qaeda for Bo Bergdahl. And then she gets on and claims he's a war hero who served with distinction. And everybody knew he was a deserter.
And George, they knew from the beginning he was a deserter. This isn't something, after he came back, a few people came out of the woodwork. I mean, it was known from the get-go that he walked away.
Right.
American troops died trying to find him.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's what's annoying is even on relatively simple stuff, she can't be trusted to tell the truth. On the Iran nuclear deal, she said in the New York Times, the way in which most Americans have heard the story of the Iran deal presented, the Obama administration began seriously engaging with the Iranian officials in 2010. She goes on, she says, and then she says, the New York Times says all of this was largely manufactured for the purposes of selling the deal. This is the New York Times. This is not some conservative rag. This isn't the RNC. It's certainly not the conservative commandos. This is the New York Times. Largely manufactured for the purpose of selling the deal, as they described it. And anyhow, they said, and then they go on to say, even when certain particulars of that story were true, the implications that readers and viewers were encouraged to take away were ones that were misleading and false. So even when they told you something was true, they did it in a way designed to mislead you. And of course, most of the things they told you are false. Again, New York Times says this. So anyhow, bottom line is, then you get forward to the Trump unmasking. When the story first came out, what did she say? Excuse me. She said, I don't know anything about this. I've never heard of this. This is bizarre. What are you talking about? Of course, now we know that she said, now what does she say? Oh, I didn't do it for political reasons.
Really, everything she's ever done is for political reasons. Hey, George, we've got to take a break again, and you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with George Landreth and Rick Trader, and we're coming to you from WNJC in Philadelphia and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, Canadian Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7. George and I will be right back with more news and commentary.
They say I'm crazy, I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
The Conservative Commandos radio show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos radio network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wade. Conservative Commandos is happy to welcome Liberty HealthShare as a sponsor. Liberty HealthShare is a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. Liberty Health Share exists for everyone who purchases health care for themselves or their family, or who wants to control their own health care. I run a small business, and we were caught in the confusion of Washington's ever-changing health insurance requirements. We found a common-sense solution in Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is not insurance. It simply unites like-minded Americans to share medical costs together. Join a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. That's Liberty Health Share. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty Health Share today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237, or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org.
This is Pastor Christina Lamb-Menier, chaplain for the Indiana Republican Assembly.
And I'm her husband, J.D. Menier. We won the election, but we must now install President Trump's nominees. We urge you to call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-225-3121 and ask your senators to do their job. They need to confirm Judge Neil Gorsuch and remaining cabinet members.
We, the people, never want to see another Berkeley. The First Amendment doesn't give you the right to commit acts of violence. It pains us to watch anarchy unfold on college campuses, bus stops, and coffee shops. Thomas Jefferson said, all tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. Let us join in unity to pray for America. Once again, the number to call is 202-225-3121.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show with George Landreth, President and CEO of Frontiers of Freedom, and yours truly, Rick Trader, and we're broadcasting to you from WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia and simulcasting in Tampa, Florida, Las Vegas, Nevada, Reno, Nevada, Macon, Georgia, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Boulder, Colorado, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Long Beach, California. Indeed, 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 we are everywhere. We're everywhere. George, interesting piece here that Tom Daschle, there may be some Democrats who are not pathological liars. Tom Daschle has actually come out and said that Democrats have far dirtier hands when it comes to using the nuclear option in the filibuster.
Absolutely. I think that's absolutely true. I mean, if you look at the facts, there's no question that that he's that he's hit the nail on the head. If you look at who the people are that are, the main offenders, it's Chuck Schumer and the Democrats who have eroded the traditional, if you will, procedures that were used in the Senate. They were designed to be protections. They were designed to require supermajorities to get things done. The House was completely based on the popular vote. The Senate was designed to cool things off and kind of make sure that the country saw things, if you will, with large majorities. It didn't want to have 51% ordering the other 49 around. They kind of wanted there to be this very, very broad, strong consensus. And so the Senate created rules that effectuated that. And that makes sense when you realize the founders actually weren't interested in creating a super efficient government. They didn't really want a government that could swoop in and get everything it needed to get done at the snap of a finger, because that's what totalitarians can do. They're really good at that. You look around the world. Hitler got done the things he wanted done quickly, and he didn't have to spend a lot of time arguing about it or building support for it. And they wanted to avoid those kinds of situations. So, and then over time in modern history, as things have become more and more partisan, the Democrats, when those rules didn't serve their purposes because they could not build the majorities they wanted, they basically shut down that system. And then now they're to the point where someone who's as clearly qualified as Neil Gorsuch can't get the votes he needs. Now, let me ask you, if you just look at their resumes and their academic backgrounds, who do you think's more qualified, Neil Gorsuch or Sotomayor?
By far, Neil Gorsuch is. You know, George, also the Democrats are a bunch of hypocrites, because when Neil Gorsuch was appointed to the federal bench, he had to be ratified through the Senate, and he got 100 votes. 100 votes. Not a single Democrat voted against him. What has he done over the past 10 years, 10, 12 years, that has soured the Democrat Party or Neil Gorsuch? It's all political, George. It's all political.
Oh, that's the truth. Absolutely. I mean, you are dead on right about that. And one of the frustrating things is there wasn't a single person who voted for Sotomayor or Kagan who said to themselves, that's who I would have picked. Not a single Republican said, ooh, that's an awesome pick. I'm excited about that. They basically said, the president won the election. He has the right to pick who he wants. Our job is to make sure he's not appointing, like high school seniors. They have to be qualified, meaning they've got the educational background, they've got the professional background, and that's where they drew the line. They didn't require that he be the same as their views. So it's not the Republicans who've been partisan; it's the Democrats, because the Republicans have approved the president's selections to the Supreme Court. It's the other way. So I think Tom Daschle's absolutely correct, and he goes through and kind of describes how we used to have a 67 vote requirement for certain things. The Democrats got rid of that, dropped it down to 60. Then they had a 60 vote requirement for some things. They then got rid of that and dropped it down to 50 or 51. And now they're all going crazy that the Republicans have changed it for one vote, and that's the Supreme Court nominations. And I think it's fair, because there's no doubt that Gorsuch is every bit, to the absolutely, at least, you could not argue he's less qualified than the many liberal nut jobs the Republicans have voted for, and they did not vote for them thinking they were good conservative judges. They voted for them because they basically said, we lost the election, he has the right to make appointments, our job is just to make sure he's not appointing people who don't have the requisite training. Now, I would argue they probably should add to that the requirement, make sure they have the understanding of a just the understanding of a high school civics, graduate from high school, which I would argue they don't. They don't even understand simple separation of powers, etc. But that's just me.
Well, when you talk about Sotomayor, when you talk about Kagan, when you go back and look at those votes, how many no votes did those justices get from the Republicans? Did they get any no votes? Did Sotomayor?
They may have gotten a few, but they were passed with large majorities.
Right.
I don't remember the exact vote, but it was not a party line vote. There may have been some Republicans who voted no, but I think they even got a majority of the Republicans.
I believe they did too. So when it comes now, the filibuster laws and the rules in the Senate, Georgian, maybe you could help explain this since you're you are a constitutional attorney. The rules that the Senate runs by are just rules the Senate makes up. It's arbitrary as to how the Senate changes the rules as far as voting and voting procedures. Is this correct?
Correct. The filibuster is not in the Constitution itself. What's in the Constitution is that the House and the Senate have the power to make their own rules as to how they will work and function. So the Senate has always had this what we call the filibuster, or it's basically a rule that requires before you can stop debate, you have to have very, very strong support for stopping the debate. And so historically, those numbers have changed a little bit over time because the Senate, because like I said, it's not the Constitution, it's in the Senate rules. Those are actually passed by a simple majority. So a simple majority passed the Senate rules. Those rules have existed in very similar but somewhat different forms over the years, but there's always been a form of the filibuster. And up until recently, it has been abused, basically. It didn't used to be abused, but it it is obviously now being abused. It's being used for partisan purposes. So the way it works now, at least, or up until last Friday, the way it worked was liberal presidents and liberal senates would pass through only liberal judges. But when you had a conservative Senate or Republican Senate, they would honor the president's choice. And as long as that person met certain educational backgrounds, professional backgrounds, they would approve them. So in that world, what you have is a world in which Republicans cannot get their nominees through, period, and Democrats can. And that's obviously not a tenable solution. That's not remotely fair or reasonable.
Well,
it'd be like saying, hey, let's play a ball game. I make a bucket, I get 5 points. You make a bucket, you get nothing.
Right.
How do you win that game?
You can't. And just an example, 8 years ago, we have 13 district courts in the United States. Everybody's heard about the crazy, wacky Ninth Circuit Court. However, that was the only court that was Democrat controlled. 8 years later, after 8 years of Barack Obama, he appointed over 100 judges, which were approved by the Republican Senate, by and large. He got over eight judges appointed to federal benches. Now, 7 of the 13 district courts are controlled by liberal judges. Hey, and it just goes to show that Republicans gave Obama what he wanted. The first nominee to the Supreme Court that Donald Trump makes, and you hear all this crying and whining and complaining coming from the Democrats. One side wants to be fair. The other side you can't be fair with, George. So I think it's incumbent upon the Republicans now to take a page out of the Democrat playbook. And at some time, there's going to be a Democrat in the White House. I hope they have long memories as far as what the Democrats have done to Donald Trump, Neil Gorsuch, and even more important, George, the next pick that Donald Trump has for the Supreme Court. Hey, George, it is break time, and you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with George Landreth and Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network at WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7. On the other side, we'll be talking with Dr. Betsy McCoy about no robots. No, I should say no, robots will not put us all on the unemployment line. Don't go away, George, and I'll be right back with our next guest. This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
If your health care has become a burden and you're worried about being stuck for another year, you have options. Liberty Health Share could be the solution to your problem. Open enrollment is here and could be your chance to free yourself from insurance. Take this opportunity and join Liberty Health Share. You can finally be in control and have freedom when it comes to your health care. Liberty HealthShare offers an entirely open network, which means you choose your doctors and you choose your hospitals. Liberty HealthShare offers freedom from insurance, meaning no tax-related penalties. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty HealthShare today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237. Or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org. That's libertyhealthshare.org.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos Radio Show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos Radio Show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Greetings, listeners. We're glad to have you back. This is George Landreth, and I am here with Rick Schrader. You're listening to Conservative Commandos, and I want to remind you that if you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com, ccrshow.com, and at 11 a.m. you can always go to rednationrisingradio.com, and at midnight to redstatetalkradio.com. And you can always listen to the Conservative Commandos from your phone if you dial this number, 832-999-1199. We have with us the special guest that we told you about. We have Dr. Betsy McCoy. She's a constitutional scholar. She has a Ph.D. from Columbia University. She is a patient advocate, and she's an expert in healthcare policy, and she is also the former lieutenant governor of the state of New York. And She is founded, for example, and currently chairman of the Committee to Reduce Infection Deaths, and it's a nationwide educational campaign to stop hospital-acquired infections. And she's been on shows like Good Morning America, CBS News, ABC 2020, many other national programs, and of course, she has been a guest many times on the Conservative Commandos radio show. She's the author of over 300 scholarly and popular articles and 3 books, including A History of the U.S. Constitution. Dr. McCoy, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Oh, I always really like to be on your show. It's such a public service.
Well, we appreciate it. You've written a really interesting article. I know I've been involved in some public policy discussions, and I know that there are a lot of people who are really worried about artificial intelligence and robots and how essentially someday all this technology is going to overtake us, and it's going to be like a sci-fi movie, and we will, at least at the very best, will be unemployed, and at the very worst, will be slaughtered and killed by all these robots that will be intellectually and physically stronger than we are.
Well, robots are just the latest tool. When you think about it, over the course of human history, we've constantly increased our productivity by employing tools. And the robots will, of course, replace many current jobs, but at the same time, they're going to do what all previous tools did, which is to foster the creation of many new types of jobs. In the past, automation has always led to more employment, not less. And in fact, in the article that you just cited, I explained about the ATM machines, because there was a lot of fear that ATM machines, which came into use about 40... Pardon me?
No more bankers.
Yes, they would be no more bankers, but in fact, ATM machines made banks so much more profitable and so much more productive. They produced so much more goods and services for each human employed. The banks expanded a lot and hired many more people.
Right.
And the job of teller, for example, was redefined to involve many more sophisticated high-level tasks. Tellers earned a lot more than they had in the past. So it was a win-win.
Well, I would give this. Let me give an example, and you can tell me if I'm thinking correctly or correct me if I need to be corrected. In 1825, the vast majority of Americans worked in the agrarian sector. They were basically farmers of some sort.
You bet.
As things like tractors and Cyrus McCormick's mechanical reaper,
right.
all those things began to change the way it was, and so farms, you had fewer and fewer people being farmers. Today, a very small percentage of the population are farmers, and yet the reality is all those people are not unemployed. They're actually doing other things.
That's right. And what all of this evolution of technology has led to is a higher standard of living. Whenever an hour of human labor can produce more goods and services, that's a bigger pie to divide up. And that's always the goal of society, to increase productivity. Before Donald Trump was elected, all the economists were such naysayers. They were saying we'll never reach 4 or 5% annual growth in GDP because the world is just in a malaise, lacking technological innovation. Well, here is the next big breakthrough: robots. Just like trucks and automobiles at the beginning of the 20th century, computers 45 years ago, and now the new innovations will be in an artificial intelligence. And I'm looking ahead and knowing that in the next 20 to 30 years, we're going to have a burst of productivity, and that's going to mean rapid economic growth again.
Right. I think every technology
that is good news. That is good news.
No, I hear you. Yeah, we probably don't need to, people spend a lot of time getting upset about things, but if you think about it, there was I think it was Milton Friedman. He was in China, and they were building, I think a canal or something, and they were basically digging with shovels.
Right.
He asked them, why don't you use some heavy equipment to do this? And they said, we want to have full employment.
Yeah,
said,
that's exactly it.
And he said, if that's your goal, why don't you give everyone a spoon then?
Exactly. And, Milton, I've used that example many times. Similarly, he said at one point, look, if you want full employment, abolish the railroad and have all freight carried on people's backs. The idea is not job creation, it's wealth creation, more goods and services.
Yep, that's the truth. Well, I want to make sure that we've got a couple of minutes before we got to take a break, but I want to make sure that I want to time that correctly because I hate asking a question and then cutting you off. But where did this idea that technology steals jobs come from? My theory is that it comes from the truth, which is when they invented cars, the people who made carriages and saddles lost jobs. But the economy as a whole did not.
No,
and those people were able to change jobs and probably get better paying jobs.
Exactly.
But is that where it comes
and of
from?
Course, remember that far farther in the past, at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, there was a tremendous fear when they mechanized the textile mills that people would be driven out of their employment. Remember the Luddites in England protesting the Industrial Revolution. So this goes way, way back.
Right.
But it's not a very visionary approach to economic growth and development.
So let me just play devil's advocate. Yes, you're right. Technology for the last 10,000 years has not cost net jobs. It has ultimately spurred more economic growth and enhanced our standard of living. But that can't go on forever. At some point, it has to stop.
What do you mean?
Robots are where it stops.
That it's only limited by your imagination. Well, of course, we can't predict what the next major technological breakthroughs will be. No one predicted the automobile in 1800, but by 1900 it was obvious what was going to occur. So I'm very confident that we will continue to innovate. The challenge in the short term is to make sure that people have the skills to move into the new economy. And when I see people going to college, and now people like Bernie Sanders promoting free college, they're going to college and they're signing up to major in film or gender studies or some other politically correct course of study, and no one is saying to them, you won't have job skills when you get out. How about taking computer science? How about taking
be an
physics?
engineer?
How about taking accounting? How about taking basic math so that you can have the skills to acquire the knowledge you need as the economy evolves?
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that. We've got to take a quick break. Dr. McCoy, would you be willing to stick to this break so we can continue this conversation on the other side?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Thanks so much. We are coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network Studios, WNJC 1360, which is our flagship station in Philadelphia. But as Rick has read earlier and let you know, we have stations all over the country, and on top of that, we have the Internet, so you can be listening to us anywhere. And if you're clever enough, you can probably get through Kim Jong-un's filters, which would certainly filter out the Conservative Commandos. But we're on the Internet with places like American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, and AM/FM 24/7. Don't go away. Rick and I and Dr. McCoy will be right back.
That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos Radio Show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wade. Conservative Commandos is happy to welcome Liberty HealthShare as a sponsor. Liberty HealthShare is a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. Liberty HealthShare exists for everyone who purchases health care for themselves or their family, or who wants to control their own health care. I run a small business, and we were caught in the confusion of Washington's ever-changing health insurance requirements. We found a common-sense solution in Liberty HealthShare. Liberty HealthShare is not insurance. It simply unites like-minded Americans to share medical costs together. Join a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. That's Liberty HealthShare. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty HealthShare today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237, or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org.
This is Pastor Christina Lamb-Menier, chaplain for the Indiana Republican Assembly.
And I'm her husband, J.D. Menier. We won the election, but we must now install President Trump's nominees. We urge you to call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-225-3121 and ask your senators to do their job. They need to confirm Judge Neil Gorsuch and remaining cabinet members.
We the people never want to see another Berkeley. The First Amendment doesn't give you the right to commit acts of violence. It pains us to watch anarchy unfold on college campuses, bus stops, and coffee shops. Thomas Jefferson said, "All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent." Let us join in unity to pray for America. Once again, the number to call is 202-225-3121.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Greetings, we're back, and we're glad you're with us. There's lots to talk about. We have a great guest in Dr. Betsy McCoy, and before I engage her back in this conversation, I just want to remind you that you can hear a rebroadcast of today's show. If you missed anything you want to catch up back on, just check out our websites, ccrsnetwork.com and ccrshow.com. And, of course, at 11 a.m., you can always go to rednationrisingradio.com, and at midnight, you can log on to redstatetalkradio.com. And with your phone and this number, you can always follow the Conservative Commandos, 832-999-1199. As I said, we have been talking with Dr. Betsy McCoy. She's a constitutional scholar. She is actually more than just a constitutional scholar. I don't mean to suggest that's not enough, but she actually has an impressive background both in medical issues, in public policy issues. Part of that probably stems from the fact that she has been the lieutenant governor of the state of New York, and that would require one to be up on all the latest public policy issues. So as a result of that, we have her on the show periodically to share her wisdom and expertise with us. She's written over 300 scholarly and popular articles and 3 books, including, at least from my perspective, probably one of the most important, is a history of the U.S. Constitution, something that sadly most folks that in America today seem not to fully understand, and it's always good to have that perspective. So Dr.
Well,
McCoy,
we're putting the Constitution back into effect under our new
I'm glad to hear that, and I appreciate, I mean, that's certainly a goal of mine. I know that you share that goal, and I appreciate that.
And I'm hoping we eliminate that filibuster for legislation as well as for Supreme Court appointments, because there's nothing in the Constitution that would require a 60-vote majority in the
Exactly.
US
It's
Senate.
historical. The Constitution simply says that this House and the Senate can make their own rules. And I think in a world in which you have statesmen who are a little more reasonable and rational, a filibuster rule makes sense. But we now have essentially a Senate that is so hyper-partisan that they simply will not allow anything that the conservatives want to go through. It could be a statement saying that motherhood is awesome, and they would oppose it because they would argue that it probably alienates and hurts the feelings of fathers.
That's right. And by the way, the framers carefully debated at the Constitutional Convention and again in the Federalist Papers whether to require a supermajority for things like legislation or the approval of Supreme Court nominees. And they were against requiring more than a simple majority because they had already lived through the deadlock, the gridlock under the Articles of Confederation, which did require a supermajority to legislate. And they didn't want to repeat that experience.
Right. So my point is, you can argue that for it in an historical context, but I think that in today's world, it makes doing anything almost impossible. And it basically, as I kind of said earlier, it puts us in a position where the liberals can get their judges through because our side will be rational and reasonable and allow the president to make appointments, and their side just won't be.
Well, that's right. Well, we've pushed it aside for judges forever now. It's gone forever.
Understood.
But pertaining to legislation, the fact is that Chuck Schumer, for example, constantly invokes the framers to defend the filibuster, and that's just plain nonsense. The framers were actually against requiring a supermajority to legislate.
Well, and certainly, as you've said, it is not in the Constitution. Many people think it is for some reason. What's in the Constitution is that by a simple majority vote, both the House and then separately the Senate will create the rules by which they will operate.
That's right. And there were 5 specific occasions on which a supermajority is required: to approve a treaty, to override a presidential veto, to amend the Constitution, to remove an officer of government who was impeached by the lower house, and to remove a member of Congress. Those are the 5. And if the framers had wanted to add more, they would have done so.
They knew how to do it, so if they wanted to do it more than once, they could have. In fact, they did it more than once. But
there's no number 6 there.
Exactly. Well, we've been talking about your article, No Robots Won't Put All of Us in the Unemployment Line. And I assume you probably think it's unlikely they'll kill us all off, too.
That's right. I'm not worried about that at all. One of the most interesting places to see the fruits of robotic work is in the auto industry, where it's being used very widely, and not just in the U.S., but also in Japan and South Korea and Germany. And when President Trump says he's going to bring auto jobs back to the U.S., we should all realize that the jobs he's bringing back are not exactly the same jobs that left. They're going to be more sophisticated jobs that require a more complex tasks. So we have to be sure that everyone of every age is getting the skills training and the basic mathematical grounding needed to operate these very complex programmed machinery.
Absolutely. We need more people with degrees in engineering, whether it be computer, chemical, or electrical, or just whatever. I mean, we need more people who know how to build and design.
Even a hotel manager is going to have to manage a fleet of robots who will be delivering room service.
Right. Well, I do not want to cut out my co-host, Rick Trader. I want to make sure he gets a chance to say something. I don't want to filibuster because it's not in the Constitution. I have no right to do it. So I'm going to let Rick in.
Here in the Conservative Commandos radio show, we are speaking with Dr. Betsy McCoy. She's a constitutional scholar and also one of the foremost authorities on Obamacare and health care. Dr. McCoy, great to speak with you again. In your article, I wanted to switch gears a little bit because you alluded or you mentioned in here that left-wingers like Bernie Sanders is calling for a free college. And your Governor Cuomo, and you being the former lieutenant governor of New York, probably has a lot to say about this. But Governor Cuomo has just come out for free college for people in New York, for students in New York, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this.
Well, I come at this issue from 2 points of view. Number one is that New Yorkers already live in tax hell. New Yorkers, people who live in Connecticut and New Jersey, they're the highest taxed in the nation. So it's extremely frustrating to see politicians think of more ways to spend money so that they can impose even heavier tax burdens on the residents of those 3 states. Mind you, those 3 states lead the nation in one distinction. They're losing population the fastest because anybody who can leave the state does so to avoid the extremely high tax burden. So that's one reason. The second concern is that New York State, like Massachusetts and Pennsylvania, are really homes for dozens and dozens of very distinguished private colleges. And those private colleges are going to really suffer now that Governor Cuomo has made public colleges absolutely free. So I'm watching to see what he's going to do to respond to this very important industry in New York State, higher education, which is going to be clobbered by this new rule.
Very interesting. And Governor, you also see this as a way of governments controlling education once again. And as you said, well, what's going to happen to the private colleges? Okay, if the private colleges go away, I mean, we'll lose choice. Students will lose options of where they can go.
Right. Of course, there's very little choice on most college campuses now anyway. No freedom of speech is what I'm referring to.
Right.
They've created colleges as a safe space, safe for everything except the First Amendment.
Dr. Betsy McCoy, always enjoy having you on the show. Always enjoy speaking with you. Please tell our audience how they could read your article and follow your work.
Oh, I'd love to do that. Come to BetsyMcCoy.com, www.BetsyMcCaugey.com, and I'm in the New York Post every week.
Dr. McCoy, again, thank you so much. Take care. God bless. Have a wonderful Easter. And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with George Landreth and yours truly, Rick Trader. And we're coming to you from WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia, our flagship station, and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7. Don't go away. On the other side of our break, we're going to be speaking with James Carafano from the Heritage Foundation. We're going to be talking about North Korea. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions.
We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
If your health care has become a burden and you're worried about being stuck for another year, you have options. Liberty Health Share could be the solution to your problem. Open enrollment is here and could be your chance to free yourself from insurance. Take this opportunity and join Liberty Health Share. You can finally be in control and have freedom when it comes to your health care. Liberty Health Share offers an entirely open network, which means you choose your doctors and you choose your hospitals. Liberty Health Share offers freedom from insurance, meaning no tax-related penalties. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty Health Share today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237. Or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org. That's libertyhealthshare.org.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos Radio Show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos Radio Show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back. This is George Landreth with Rick Trader on the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. And if you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com and ccrshow.com. At 11 a.m., you can always log on to rednationrisingradio.com. At midnight, redstatetalkradio.com. And with a phone and this number, you can always listen to the Conservative Commandos, 832-999-1199. We have, as our special guest, James J. Carfano. He is a leading expert in national security and foreign policy matters. He is also the Heritage Foundation's Vice President for Foreign and Defense Policy Studies. He's an E.W. Richardson Fellow, and he's the director of the Catherine and Shelby Cullum Davis Institute for International Studies. He's been a regular guest on a variety of U.S. network and cable television news organizations, everything from ABC to Fox to MSNBC to PBS. He's also been on National Public Radio, Pajamas TV, Voice of America. The list goes on and on. He also, you've probably read him. His stuff, his columns, his commentary appear around the country and in a variety of newspapers, USA Today, Washington Times, New York Post, Philadelphia Inquirer, etc., and, of course, Forbes magazine. James, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Hey, it's good to be with you.
We appreciate you being with us. You've written an excellent article. It appears at Fox News. It's on North Korea, and so I think it's time. There's been even some things today that have happened. I think that, quite frankly, even the Tomahawk attack in Syria may have some bearing on messages being sent to North Korea. But I wanted to ask you. Some people are, up in arms, going, "Oh my gosh, he said he wasn't going to get us in war, and now here he is. I can hear the war drums already." Is that what's going on?
No. So, first of all, I think that sending U.S. ships up to North Korea, dispatching the bombers, strategic bombers, which can carry both conventional and nuclear weapons, the purpose of that is really more to reassure the South Koreans than it is to cow the North Koreans. I mean, the North Koreans don't think we're going to attack them anytime soon. They're not stupid. That's just the line they tried out to keep the country under its thumb. But we have to protect you from the Americans. Not that we have to protect you from how we kind of exploit you every single day. But what the South Koreans constantly, I think, need to be reassured is, we're their ally, and as North Korea advances their nuclear weapons capability, South Koreans might say, look, is the United States really going to come to our aid and fight with us? Are they going to risk an attack on, Los Angeles or San Francisco? And I think it's important for the United States to say, look, when the North Koreans threaten you, we're going to come and show we're by your side. What that actually does is significantly lessens the potential for any kind of inadvertent conflict.
Right. One thing that's interesting is I would argue this is very much needed after 8 years. If I were an American ally beginning on January 1st, let's say not beginning on that day, but I'm a U.S. ally and we go back in time to just last January 1st.
Right.
I'm a little nervous because America spent 8 years largely paying lip service to any leadership in the world and largely essentially ignoring the idea that the world is a safer place when America exerts some leadership. So I think that Trump is actually wisely making it clear, not just rhetorically, but in some very low-risk ways, meaning not actually going to get us into some prolonged land war, sending a message out there, which is there's a new sheriff in town, and I actually do believe the world's a better place when America exerts leadership, and I will do that. Do you see it that way?
Well, I think there's a lot to that comment. A lot of people say, well, Trump has to do these things because he has to reassure people that, he's not going to be an isolationist and walk away. And that's not right at all. What Trump is doing is reassuring people that the foreign policy we had the last 8 years is out the window. Because fundamentally, Barack Obama's foreign policy was to disengage, to walk away. That made the allies far more nervous and freaked out than Trump's tweeting. So what Trump has done in the last 2 weeks is demonstrate that he's not a warmonger, not an isolationist, but what he is he's interested in demonstrating that America is going to exert persistent presence in the part of the world, where we have to defend our vital interests. And it's not just our friends and allies that appreciate that. And I'm not making this stuff up. Look, we have foreign officials coming in and out of Washington for weeks now, and they cycle through the White House and the NSC and officials. in the government, and I talk to many of them, and all of them to a person come away and give me the same message. They talk to senior people's administration. They feel reassured. They feel more confident that American engagement and leadership is back. Not in the Bush way of, we're going to go out and invade countries. Not in the Obama way of we're going to look for reasons to walk away, but that America is going to stand with its allies and defend our common interests. And it's not just our allies that get that. If you look closely at the way both the Russians and the Chinese responded to these high-level meetings, it's very clear that they walked away saying, this isn't a guy that's going to give us something for nothing like Barack Obama. This is somebody that we're going to have to treat seriously. That's the bottom line, I think, from the engagement with both Moscow and Beijing.
James, you talk about the Barack Obama foreign policy, but isn't the Clinton legacy in a large part responsible for the problems we're having with North Korea today?
I think there's a lot of blame to go around here. I mean, in fairness, when the Cold War ended, the real question was, what was the right way for American leadership to be exercised in kind of the post-Cold War world? And we've had a succession of presidents that have been kind of trying different answers. And so you had the first Bush with the kind of New World Order, which, kind of died stillborn. Mm-hmm. Clinton was really about engagement and enlargement. Let's just reach out to everybody, and everybody will become democracies, and everybody will be fine. And what you did with countries like North Korea was, look, just pretend that they're not going in the wrong direction. Maybe they'll come around. That didn't work. Bush came back with a much more muscular strategy, which is, let's just go out and kind of impose our will and kind of reset the stage in places like the Middle East and Asia. And honestly, that didn't get us very far either. And then Barack Obama came in and said, the problem is us. That, we're creating all the turmoil in the world. Let's just find out with these people what their problem is, give them what they want, and walk away, and we'll all just live together. And honestly, that didn't work either. So what Trump is doing is something which is very important and strategic. On the one hand, he's saying, look, I can't solve the world's problem. It's not my job to solve the world's problem. A lot of these problems are insolvable. But the United States is a global power. We have global interests. We have allies around the globe. We're going to go into the neighborhoods that are important to us, and we're going to say, look, don't screw with us in our neighborhood. So I think this is something historic and new and different, and something that hasn't been tried since the end of the Cold War.
Hey, James, we have to go to break in a minute, but I wanted to kind of clarify my question. What I meant by the Clinton legacy, what I meant was the Clinton legacy of giving North Korea nuclear technology.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's something to that. But the problem always was, if a country really wants to get a nuclear weapon, and this is the problem with the Iran deal, and unless they decide voluntarily to give it up, which countries have, like South Korea, Libya, something else, if they really want that, the only way you're going to stop them is to invade them. I mean, and in part, that kind of really explains why we invaded Iraq. I mean, we thought this guy was going to develop nuclear weapons, and if you were serious about stopping that, the only way you can do is walk in that. So, I mean, I think the Clinton guys were enablers, but if the Kim clan wanted a nuclear weapon, eventually they were going to get it. Particularly since they had some very smart shortcuts.
James, we got to take a quick.
Part of cutting that off.
Yeah, James, we got to take a quick break. Could you hold on for just 2 minutes for us, please?
You bet.
And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with George Landreth and Rick Trader. Our guest this segment is James Carafano. He is he is with the Heritage Foundations. He's the Vice President of Foreign and Defense Policy Studies. And we're coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network at WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia. Around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7. Don't go away. George and I'll be right back with our guest.
They say I'm nasty, but
The Conservative Commandos Radio Show is the commander of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We've established a front line of conservative leaders and ironclad patriots to revive the promise of America.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
We patriots have succeeded in securing the next 4 years of American prosperity, sovereignty, and liberty under President Donald Trump. But the fight is never over, and we must be forever vigilant.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
Do you have a passion for American values? Do you believe in preserving the American dream? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, Monday through Saturday from 12 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 AM, or around the world on the internet at ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Check out our websites for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wade. Conservative Commandos is happy to welcome Liberty HealthShare as a sponsor. Liberty HealthShare is a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. Liberty HealthShare exists for everyone who purchases health care for themselves or their family, or who wants to control their own health care. I run a small business, and we were caught in the confusion of Washington's ever-changing health insurance requirements. We found a common-sense solution in Liberty HealthShare. Liberty HealthShare is not insurance. It simply unites like-minded Americans to share medical costs together. Join a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. That's Liberty HealthShare. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty HealthShare today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237, or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org.
This is Pastor Christina Lamb-Menier, chaplain for the Indiana Republican Assembly.
And I'm her husband, J.D. Menier. We won the election, but we must now install President Trump's nominees. We urge you to call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-225-3121 and ask your senators to do their job. They need to confirm Judge Neil Gorsuch and remaining cabinet members.
We the people never want to see another Berkeley. The First Amendment doesn't give you the right to commit acts of violence. It pains us to watch anarchy unfold on college campuses, bus stops, and coffee shops. Thomas Jefferson said, all tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. Let us join in unity to pray for America. Once again, the number to call is 202-225-3121.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back. This is George Landreth, and you are listening to yours truly and Rick Trader and our special guest, James J. Carafano, and he has been talking to us about an interesting article he wrote. But before we get to that, I just want to remind you that if you missed the first part of it and you want to hear more, go to our websites to check out so you can listen to the entire show, ccrsnetwork.com, ccrshow.com. At 11 a.m., you can always check out rednationrisingradio.com. At midnight, redstatetalkradio.com. And if you're not near a phone and you're not near your computer, you can listen to the Conservative Commandos from any phone just by dialing this number, 832-999-1199. As I said, we've been talking with James J. Carafano. He is a leading expert in national security and foreign policy issues. He's with the Heritage Foundation. He's their vice president of foreign and defense policy studies. He's also the E.W. Richardson Fellow, and he's the director of the Catherine and Shelby Cullum Davis Institute for International Studies. He publishes widely. He also appears on a wide variety of network news programs to explain foreign policy and national security matters. And he, of course, has been on this show many times. We appreciate him being here. James, it's always good to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We before the break, we were talking, obviously, about Donald Trump and his foreign policy and what he was doing. And I think you made an interesting and nuanced distinction. One argument would be because he ran, some would argue, as an isolationist, he now has to do this. And you made the point that he does have to do this, but they misunderstand why. He has to do this because for 8 years we were, quote, leading from behind, which is to say not leading at all. And we had disengaged from the world and largely said we don't much care. And you can do what you want, and we may write a tersely worded press release that will be put out by the State Department, but we won't ever do anything. And Trump has to remind people that we will do something, and what the something that he's going to do is going to be something that makes the point but does not necessarily commit us unnecessarily to a long-term, bloody conflict. That strikes me as pretty smart negotiating, and it demonstrates a ability to understand the world around him and how he can promote America's interests without engaging America and getting us mired down in things we don't really want to be mired down in.
I don't know where people got the idea that Trump was an isolationist. I mean, even just listening to his rhetoric on the campaign trail, Trump said, I'm going to destroy ISIS and Al-Qaeda. You can't destroy ISIS and Al-Qaeda from New Jersey. I mean, you have to go to the Middle East. You have to go to Afghanistan. Trump said, I'm going to deal with the Russians and the Chinese. As you well know, the Russians and the Chinese respect strength, and they respect people who negotiate from a position of strength. So if Trump walked away from NATO, the Russians wouldn't give him anything. If Trump withdrew from Asia, the Chinese would ignore him. I mean, part of the reason why the Russians and the Chinese treat Trump with respect now is he's actually demonstrated that he's not going to walk away from his interests. So there's no evidence, even from his own tweets, that he's actually an isolationist.
Right. I agree with you.
I mean, there's also no evidence that he's a neocon. I mean, Trump has said, I'm not interested in nation building. And, we just had this terrible confrontation with the Russians. And he just said, look, I'm not looking for war with the Russians. I have interests I have to defend, and the Russians need to learn to respect that. That's not the attitude of a neocon. This is not a guy that's looking for a fight. But and I think if you look at what happened in Syria, particularly with the missile strike, it's very clear to understand what Trumpian foreign policy is. Trump made it very clear that the United States is in the Middle East to stop the spread of Iranian influence, which is very destabilizing, and to crush ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And to do that, we have to stabilize Iraq. We have to stabilize the large refugee populations there. We have to help root out ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And when Assad started gassing people, he's inflaming the conflict. He's making it more difficult for the U.S. to operate. And basically, Trump sent a message that here's 59 cruise missiles to tell you to stay out of my way. I got work to do here, and you trying to make this war bigger and worse is not helping. So back off, Jack. And again, that's not the action of a neocon. That's not the action of looking to expand the war. And even now, the reports of what people in the White House are debating, how many troops and how should we do, and some people want more and some people want less. And you know what? That is completely healthy, because under the Obama administration, Barack Obama and Barry Jarrett walked in office, and they decided what they were going to do, which was the most politically convenient thing for them. And then they just came out and told the rest of the government, this is what we're going to do. I would rather have a White House where people have honest disagreements and sit down and are transparent about those disagreements and walk in and see the president and say, look, this is how your team sees it, and make a decision, and we're all going to support that decision, and we're all going to work together. That's a heck of a lot healthier than what we've had the last 8 years.
Absolutely. Quick question. I noticed yesterday, and I'm a product of the Cold War. I grew up in an era in which I was used to seeing China and Russia vote in the UN as a block vote. I noticed yesterday they did not. They broke with history, and China actually abstained from a no vote.
Right.
I thought that was interesting. Do you think that is a result of some smart movement by our current president and a rejection of Barack Obama's weak foreign policy, or is that just dumb luck?
I think it was the right. I think this team, which is actually person for person and as a team, I think this is probably one of the most talented national security teams that we had in a long time. Even when we had kind of really good people, like you had a Colin Powell and Don Rumsfeld, they often spend all their time arguing with each other. I do get a sense that this team's actually working much more together. But, there was this stupid argument that says, well, you can't push against the Russians or you can't push against the Chinese because then what's going to happen is they're going to gang up on you. Well, you know what? That's not what's happening here. When Trump put his finger in the chest of the Chinese and he put his finger in the chest of the Russians, what did they do? They didn't gang up in the UN and vote against us. What they did is both of them said, you know what? I'm going to look out for number one. So China doesn't care about Russia. China cares about getting on an even keel relationship with the United States.
Interesting. Now, we're running short on time, so I want to make sure I give you a chance to tell folks how they can follow what you do and make sure that they are up on, and foreign policy is important, and if they want to have a reliable source for really expert information, you are the go-to guy. So how do they find out what James Carafano is doing?
So I work at the Heritage Foundation. I'm very proud of the work that the Heritage Foundation does, and the thing that it does best, it's incredibly transparent. So everything we do, we put on our website, and it's not just our stuff on foreign policy and defense, domestic issues, economic issues, and it's all at the Heritage website, which is just heritage.org. So that's to me the go-to place. Or, you do what I do, which is just Google everything. And the good thing about Carafano is I think I'm like the only Carafano on the planet. So if you Google Carafano, 99% of the stuff that's going to come up is me. Sorry.
Right, that's Carafano.
Right,
just like
in Frank, A-N-O. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we appreciate you spending the half hour with us. We really appreciate it. It's been great to have you on the show. You've enlightened us and helped us better understand what's been happening the last week.
Anytime. Good talking to you guys.
Absolutely. Well, Rick, we only have, a few seconds to go?
Oh, we got about a minute, I would guess. And, George, wanted to wish you and your family a very happy Easter. Looks like here on the East Coast we're going to have some great weather. Always looking for a beautiful Easter day. And I want to thank you for sitting in today as my co-host. I also wanted to thank our guest today, Dr. Betsy McCoy, our most recent guest, James Carafano from the Heritage Foundation. I want to thank Mr. John Forsythe Jr. for working the boards. But for right now, we got to run. We got to go. Take care. God bless. And we'll see you next week on the radio. Taking off tomorrow.
60 AM. WNJC. Washington Township, Philadelphia.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wade. Conservative Commandos is happy to welcome Liberty HealthShare as a sponsor. Liberty HealthShare is a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. Liberty HealthShare exists for everyone who purchases health care for themselves or their family, or who wants to control their own health care. I run a small business, and we were caught in the confusion of Washington's ever-changing health insurance requirements. We found a common-sense solution in Liberty HealthShare. Liberty HealthShare is not insurance. It simply unites like-minded Americans to share medical costs together. Join a community of health-conscious Americans who practice long-standing Christian principles in sharing health care costs. That's Liberty HealthShare. To find out how you can easily make the change, call Liberty HealthShare today at 855-585-4237. That's 855-585-4237, or visit their website at libertyhealthshare.org.